Hey, everybody, and welcome to Cars with Cocktails, podcast where we join two things that go perfectly together, drinking and driving. Joined by my guest and co-host.
Oh, that sounds fancy.
Potentially going forward, Charles, a.k.a. the Humble Mechanic. So if anybody who's watched previous versions of this, you would have seen I had done this with somebody who works with me, Max. Charles and I have talked about doing a podcast for a very, very long time. We have never followed through with that threat. And so today we're going to take a swing at it and see if this thing works out. And maybe going forward, we'll continue to do this podcast together and get drunk on Zoom.
I feel like I need one of those microphones hanging in front of me too, because I don't feel super official. Also, thanks to a few technological differences, I'm already a third of the way in to my child cup here. I don't know if I was supposed to do that or not, but I didn't read the rule book.
I did not start drinking yet, which was a travesty. I will make myself a drink. Today we're going to be drinking gin and tonic as chosen by Charles.
Indeed.
I've seen you have gin and tonics in the past.
Yeah, it's typically my go-to. The thing I like about it is even when there's only like a couple of kinds of gin that I really, really dislike, but even when it's not top shelf, which of course is generally better, it's still okay. I'll give you the secret though for what I have found to be the best gin and tonic, and it's not as much the gin, it's more about the tonic. There's a brand of tonic that comes in a 4-pack of small glass bottles called Fever Tree. And if you get that tonic, it makes the gin and tonic a million times better. They don't add sugar to the tonic, which a lot of other tonics do. So I think that's the main deal, but it's super good. So if you want to spend a couple extra dollars on the tonic, it's almost always well worth that couple bucks. And I'll also say, don't get the lime in the little squeezy plasticky thing. Like, get an actual lime that will definitely make your drink taste better.
I got an organic lime because it's the only way you can acquire a single lime or any small quantity of limes, not get a bag of limes.
You didn't want to buy like 1,000 limes.
I didn't need 12 limes to make one drink, or let's say 2 or 3 we might have over the course of this, which would be a bunch. So so I got an organic lime. So I'm super fancy.
Good. Do you have a straw though and a tumbler cup? Because you can't be trusted without a lid.
I don't. I have an actual drink glass.
That's what adults drink out of, I hear.
It's funny. Since I have the palate of a 17-year-old girl, I don't really drink drinks like gin and tonic generally. So I don't know if I've ever even had a gin and tonic.
Oh, I'm waiting to see how you either love or hate it. There's like a very much a delineation. That's not really the right word I'm looking for, but there is definitely a divide between people either loving gin and tonics or absolutely hating drinking a Christmas tree drink.
So I actually don't mind it. I don't know how heavy my pour was because obviously I didn't really measure it or anything, and so I don't have a good gauge for how heavy this is relative to what a standard gin and tonic would be, but I like it. It's all right. I mean, I have a lime too, so if it was without a lime, I probably wouldn't necessarily love the flavor.
Yeah, lime brings it home.
I don't have your fancy water. I do have I have Schweppes.
I think I'm also drinking Schweppes too. My wife got the brand that I had mentioned before, but she got the elderberry kind, and it has a weird taste to it. So I don't usually like it, but
elderberry, it's good for your immune system.
Yes, it's something, that's for sure.
So topics for today. Now that we can revisit back to once I get two drinks in, maybe I'll revisit to see if I've changed my opinion of the flavor. But topic we talked about for today was our first cars, and also maybe talk about some nostalgic cars in terms of cars you wish you could have had when you were buying your first car. So why don't you start? What was your first car?
Yeah, so my first car was a Jeep Wrangler. I feel like, and I don't know why I feel like I have to preface this, it was way before like Jeeps were mall crawlers and like soccer mom cars. You know, of course, not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but this was many, many, many years ago. And yeah, it was before like a pink Jeep was really, really a thing. They may have been out there, but they weren't the mainstream, you know, going to the mall or going to Target type vehicle. And I gotta say, man, it was such an awesome car. It was the best of both worlds. A convertible when you wanted that, an off-road vehicle when you wanted to go out and get muddy. I remember very vividly this one time I left the top down, and this was a stripped down Jeep, right? So the features this Jeep had was air conditioning. No, sorry, it didn't have air conditioning. Power steering and a back seat. Other than that, the car didn't even come with a radio when it was new. So it had a sweet tape deck added into it until I upgraded to a CD player. But I left the top off and the windows off and everything, so it was all plastic top. And it rained, like torrential rain. There were, I don't know, 6 inches of standing water in the floor of the car. And boy, I think of like how awful that would be for one of these two cars behind me. But it, you know, 6 inches standing water, you pull the carpet up, which it had no insulation or anything like that. There's probably like 2 clips that held the carpet in. Pull the carpet up, pop the body plugs out, let the water drain out, let it air out for a day. Car was good. I got it up to, I think, in the low 80-mile-per-hour range one time going downhill. I'm sure there must have been a tailwind because those Jeeps were like, had the aerodynamics of a brick. But I loved it, and it was super fun. And I had it, I don't know, three or so years, 2.5, 3 years, and loved most every minute of it because it was super fun.
And what year was that car?
This was a 95.
Oh, so that was a pretty new car.
It was a pretty new car. I paid dearly for that pretty new car.
Yeah. My goodness, yeah, because I think we're the same age.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Yeah. So that 95 was like balling.
Oh yeah.
That was maybe a what, 3-4-year-old car at the time?
Yeah, I was about 2 years old, I think, when I started driving it.
Yeah. My first car was an 86 GMC Jimmy.
Nice. A Yimmy?
Yeah.
I like it.
2.3 liter carbureted, automatic, manual steering, no AC, much like yours. But I didn't have the ventilation that you had. I had a slipping transmission.
Windows down. Did it have crank windows or power windows?
Oh, I definitely had crank windows. Yeah.
Buddy.
Yeah. I have manual steering, so I know. You know, I think most people who have driven manual steering cars now probably have driven like a sporty car that's old, and a bigger vehicle, while it was only a 4-cylinder, was big enough that, you know, making a K-turn was pretty challenging.
Yeah, you got your workout though too.
Yeah.
Like you didn't even have to go to the gym. You just drive around, and it was in parking lots, right?
Yes. Yeah, the number one thing that I think people don't realize about manual steering cars is the number of times you have to turn the wheel relative to a power steering car. Because for gear reduction, you know, you have to turn it way more.
I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I'm almost there. I don't know that I've ever owned a car with manual steering. No, I'm pretty sure everything I've ever had has had some version of power steering, and I'm not upset about that. I'm actually okay with that.
I didn't find the manual steering to be actually the worst part. The fact that the trans slipped on that car pretty aggressively was the reason why I didn't love it, because there was a hill. You know, New Jersey is where I grew up. The town I grew up in, there was a hill that was on a highway. And right before this highway, or right before the hill, the highway had a light on it, as many highways do in very populated areas. And if I hit that light and had to stop, I would be doing about 30 by the time I got to the hill, the top of the hill. It was not capable of getting up the hill.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. So
would it get weird on the hill, like because the transmission slipped so bad? Would you have to like rev it way up? And
no, it wouldn't like slip in terms of stop, like come out of gear, like it would rev. It would just not continue to accelerate any further. So as you were going up a hill, it would slowly get slower and slower and slower until, you know, I never got to a point where it was other than being scary driving on a 55-mile-an-hour highway at 30, that was the scariest part.
I've heard New Jersey drivers aren't necessarily forgiving of those kind of scenarios.
No, they're psychos.
I can't confirm, but
no, they're complete psychos. Yeah, that was my wife. I think the first time when my wife didn't grow up there, and I met her down here in the Charlotte area. So when we went up there for the first time, I just kind of like didn't even think about it. Was just defaulted towards driving like I was from there.
It's like a total reboot. That's so weird that happens.
And she was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "You're driving like a crazy person." Yeah, it's a place where aggressive driving is almost a mandatory. Otherwise, you will get just completely run over. And to me, I feel less safe when you drive conservatively in those places.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I grew up just outside Chicago, and it's very much the same thing. In fact, when we moved here, that was one of the early things that we noted. Like, people are pretty chill when they're driving, and like, God forbid you honk your horn. You get like that mad stare down. And now, traveling a bunch, well, not right now, but traveling a bunch, and I go somewhere and I hear someone honk the horn. I'm like, dude, calm down.
Like, what's up?
It'll be okay. Like, you'll be fine. And it's like, bah, and it's not just a little beep, right? It's the bah, laying on the horn till things happen. Like, man, y'all got to calm down.
It's a city honk.
That is definitely a city honk.
Yeah.
If you're not full throttle a split second before that light turns green, you got somebody full on that horn blaring at you. But yeah, that I guess has its place. I don't know. Maybe not. So first car was a Jimmy. My first car was a Jeep. Was that like, when you got that car, was it like, okay, this is the car you're going to get? There was no other shopping, or did you shop around for a car and end up with that one? And if you did shop around, what were some other cars that you were looking at?
Okay, so I didn't shop for a car. That car that I got I bought it from a family member, and my uncle, and it was like in their family for a long time. And he actually worked on tractor trailers, so he had mechanical ability, and he had fixed it up to where it was a decent vehicle. So
it sounds like decent vehicle, maybe like a bit relative.
It's all relative. I want to say I paid $2,000 for it.
Oh, that's a good price though.
So it was a cheap vehicle and fairly reliable relative to the cost. Because, I think something that I probably take for granted now, and I'm sure you probably do too, is when you're buying a $2,000 car and you have no money behind that $2,000, it's terrifying to think about what could happen, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, for that reason, I think there was some comfort in the idea that buying a $2,000 car wasn't going to leave me with a piece of shit that would break, immediately afterwards.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about what a $2,000 car gets you, and I think what we probably need to maybe think of that in today's money, that's probably what, a $4,000 car. I would call it maybe.
Yeah.
$3,500 car. It's not a $500 car. It's something that, it may not be pretty, but it'll probably get you where you're trying to go. And yeah, a lot of hoping that it doesn't break down. Because I know after I had the Jeep, what did I have after the Jeep? Got rid of that. I had a 95, might not have been a 91. It might have been a 91 Chevy Lumina, 2-door.
That was quite a step down.
Dude, this thing was a pile of garbage. But it was a 2-door with red cloth interior, which, I mean, the car I only had for like 8 months because it just broke time after time after time. And this was long before I was any kind of mechanically inclined in fixing cars anyway. And man, it was a cool car though. Like I don't know if I should say it was a cool car.
Yeah,
it was it was a sporty car, and I enjoyed it. But I only had that for a few months. I had to just part ways with it and cut my losses because it just kept bleeding money from me. Before I got that Jeep though, I had looked at a bunch of cars and in kind of that $2,000 price range. And The one that I looked at that it was like that close to buying was, I forget the year. I want to say a 78, but I might be wrong because this was, 5,000 years ago. A 78 Pontiac Grand Prix, but not like the 90s Grand Prix that you think of. This was like a big car.
Yeah, Grand Prix were big back then.
It was like a big car, and it probably had some kind of hopped up engine because it was like a friend of a family member or somebody that was trying to sell it, and it was like gold on tan. I don't know, man. Like I think back and wonder, like, what would my driving life have been like had I got that car instead of like working real hard and having a job and paying for the Jeep. And it probably would have been awesome because that car had like some cool factor to it looking back on it.
That makes me think of like Dazed and Confused. Like you'd be just smoking weed and hanging out in the woods.
No, I was a good kid, man. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. But who knows? If I had the Grand Prix, I probably would have had to.
You were good back then?
Oh yeah, back then. I'm still good now.
Well,
I'm still good now.
less apt to do any.
Yeah, I was a pretty straight. Like no, I was a pretty straight-laced kid till I got out of high school. Then I made up for it a little bit after that. So yeah, but whatever. That was fine. I waited to barely graduate high school before I did anything dumb.
So how you had that car for a while, but I guess 3 years for the Jeep, and then you switched to that Lumina. I guess I'm sure you were just tired of paying cost-wise with the Jeep.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was what's the best way to somewhat politically correctly put this? It was a family issue, and so yeah, we had a bit of an issue with that, and lost the Jeep, got the Lumina. Then I traded the Lumina in for some Dodge that I can't remember what the hell kind of car it was. That was a pretty okay car though. Went through brakes quick and tires. And then I got rid of that. When I got rid of that was cool. That was when like my car path took a much cooler trajectory because I traded that in at CarMax when I worked there for a 97 Integra GSR. And that car was badass, dude. I loved that car. Like, it was fast. It was cool. It was sporty and fun to drive. I'm not a super tall dude, so sitting in the Integra, like all the things were within reach of where they should be. And I really dig that car. That was the first car I ever like somewhat modified, lowered exhaust intake, and probably some other stuff too.
They sounded good too when you modify them.
It was a cool car. I really liked it. I mean, it was like dumb low and terrible to drive low and obnoxiously loud. It had a pretty loud exhaust with a test pipe in it, so it didn't have a catalytic converter, except when I went to get state inspections. Then it for sure had a catalytic converter and whatnot. But yeah, I had that car for a few years, sold that car, had no car for a while I was in tech school. Then I bought a car. This is one of those cars that I wish that I'd never sold. The Integra I sold, like I had to. It was like I sold it to pay for school. But this next car I wish I would have kept because it was kind of dumb that I ever sold it. The dude that I sold it to actually still has it. And I sold this car back in 2005, I think, 2005. So it's cool the dude still has it. But this was a 91 Eclipse GSX.
Oh, nice.
I also feel like I have to preface this with, or follow this up with, like, that was before the Eclipse was a girl's car.
Yeah,
I don't think cars are girl cars.
What's ironic to me is I actually convinced my longtime girlfriend at the time to get an Eclipse GS. She had a GST, not a GSX. So for those who may not be familiar, GST was a front-wheel drive version. GSX was the all-wheel drive version.
Both turbocharged.
Both turbo.
I think they had a GS that was not turbocharged as well.
Yeah. So that was, for its time, that was probably one of the most badass cars that you could reasonably acquire. It was in that like 3000 GT, 300 ZX kind of range as far as performance. Not obviously not quite there, but much more affordable.
Yeah, that car was so cool and so fun to drive, and it had its weird quirks too. But man, I think I paid like $3,000 for that Eclipse, and I had it for 3 or 4 years before I traded it. I sold it. I bought what the hell kind of car was that? An Acura CL Type S. That was a cool car. I felt like that car was too nice for me. So I traded or sold that one. And that's when I got my first Volkswagen, a sweet 96 Cabrio.
That, if you talk about Eclipse being a girl's car, 96 Cabrio kind of rank. At least the Eclipse was fast.
Yeah. Hey, man. Well, okay. So first of all, I like convertibles, and whatever. I don't know why I have to justify this, but it's cool. I loved it. I love that stupid thing. Like, it was cheap. I paid when you calculate like tax tag and title, I paid like $25 for this car. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what kind of whatever it was, the fact that I only paid really like $25 for this car was just awesome. I don't care about the rest of it, but man, the dealer traded it, and they probably just gave the guy nothing for it. They're just like, whatever, we'll take it, and you don't have to worry about it, because the car wouldn't start. The top was destroyed. The interior was moldy and faded and whatnot, and probably a handful of other normal VW, especially normal Mark III things going on with it. So I got it. I bought it that day. Paid like $400 cash for it to have it tagged and titled and everything. And I put a battery in it. I put a coil pack in it that I had in my toolbox, and I drove it home that night. So the dealership was kind of pissed that they thought they like got one on me. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they really thought that, but they definitely didn't think I was going to be able to fix it for no dollars, because I had the parts, and drive it home that day. So I had that car for 2 years. That's another one I wish I would have kept.
Yeah. But you can get a Mark III Cabrio anytime you want.
Yeah, they're everywhere. They're all just rusted and clapped out now, though. Or they're nice, and people want like a reasonable amount for it. And I don't want to pay a reasonable amount. I want to pay very little amount for things. That's how it rolls. Like this black car, like it's worth more than I paid for it, and I like that.
Yeah, I'll have to come up now that you're set up at the new spot. I'll have to come up and check out the new place. And I have not seen that black car. But I believe it is rough, right? Kind
of a turd. If we're honest, it's kind of a turd. But it has all the things there, so the potential's there, and we're going to be doing some fun go fast stuff with it, and that is happening, and I'm excited about that.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. So I do not have the history you have in terms of cars. My next car I bought after the Jimmy was my Mark IV GTI, and I bought that new in 2001. So it was an 02 GTI. Yeah, it was my first new car, also my first manual car, and pretty much what got me into VW in the first place.
Nice. Was that before? That had to have been long before you were in the VW service world, yeah?
Yeah, so what my path was, basically I got that car. I thought, it was between a bunch of different cars and whatever, trying to figure out what was going to work for that. And then when I was getting ready to go to tech school, I started looking for jobs to try to get my foot in the door in the industry. So what I ended up doing is getting a job at a dealer with the premise of, hey, I'm going to tech school, blah, 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 whatever. So that's how I ended up even in the VW world in the first place. So, I almost feel like if things had gone differently and I chose a different car, who knows where everything would have gone for me.
You would have been selling, what is that brand? Saturn, or one of those defunct brands now.
Scion?
Yeah, there you go. You'd have been a Scion performance and maintenance shop. Mm-hmm. Honestly, man, there's probably a pretty fair market for that, I would imagine. I mean, those cars are still out there. So
there are some Scions out there.
It's funny how that just kind of happens. You know, that one random decision to make that you made to buy that GTI sort of led you to where you are today. My VW was not so glamorous. It was like I was in tech school, and they're talking about like all the MSAT programs where you can go train with the manufacturer, and I feel like, at least at the time, you know, it may be different now. If you didn't capitalize on one of those opportunities to go train with the manufacturer and get a bunch of your student loan paid for and get a bunch of free tools, like you're kind of stupid, or you just didn't qualify. But if you chose actively not to do that and you didn't already have something lined up, I think that was kind of a foolish choice. But mine was, I chose VW just because like they had the most cars on the road at the time. So most cars, most dealers, most opportunity to do and move wherever we wanted. So it was like VW Audi coin flip. I would have ended up kind of in this world no matter what, I guess, anyway. Although maybe these would be TTs sitting behind me instead of R32s, who knows? Or I would have hated it and they would be Honda Civics.
I feel like they probably wouldn't be in that space in that particular place.
Yeah, probably not. Although I've owned several Hondas, so for some reason people I think just assume like I've only owned Volkswagens in my whole life, which, to be fair, like that's a pretty reasonable assumption. You know, we have 6 cars and 5 of them are VWs, and I have to point out this. Out of the 6, 1 is non-VW. It's a Mazda Miata. It is the only car with a check engine light that I own right now. So when people say like VW check engine lights come on all the time, I'm like, well, this one Japanese car that's supposed to be like ultra reliable, that turd's the only one that has a damn check engine light on.
Well,
actually, this one might now because I did all that compression testing and crap and never blew the faults out, but.
Unpopular opinion. Yes, I also own non-VW vehicles. One of them is a Honda. Yeah, my wife has an Odyssey. Which,
that is far and away the nicest minivan on the market. So why wouldn't you buy one?
There's only 2 van options if you're going to buy one. If you feel differently, come fight me.
Yeah. So
Sienna or Odyssey, there's the only 2 vans.
The Rutan doesn't make the cut?
Oh, the Rutan, it's just a hair off from making the cut of worst van on the market.
It's a close third. Race to the bottom. I have a special hatred in my heart. Try not to carry too much hatred in my heart, but I have a special hatred in my heart for the Rutan. And I probably shouldn't, but man, anytime those things damn came in the shop, just, and it wasn't even that they were that bad. I really don't think. It's when you're a dealer tech, your whole world revolves around working on one brand. That's what you know. That's like your repair manual, your diagnostic process, your scan tool, all of it revolves around this one thing. And then you throw a completely new thing in there and it's like, oh yeah, do this under warranty time. The warranty times blow. Oh, you're supposed to be an expert at this thing, but the training classes are average at best. It's like, man, F that noise.
To me, I think the biggest thing that I found about the Rutan when we first got it, it was, all the drivability concerns, because obviously Chrysler's known for having shitty transmissions and they always have.
Terrible.
And coming from a customer base who thought, and for people who are really in the automotive world, it's kind of shocking that people think that they were buying a Volkswagen, because everybody who knew VW well and was kind of educated on cars in general, they knew that it was a Caravan, whatever, right. No big deal. But a lot of the people who bought Rutans did not know, and I would say still to this day don't know, that they bought a Dodge Caravan basically. And so all the drivability concerns were unexpected for them because that's not how they expected it to perform.
Right. And I think one of the like there was a ton of stuff that was going on in the world at the time. I think was 09 or 08 or 09 was the first year of the Rutan. So like big time economic issues in the US and a lot of obviously housing market and stuff like that. But one of the big draws to the Rutan is that they were doing leases on them when Dodge and Chrysler weren't. So people are like, well, shit, I'll just go lease this Rutan on this killer deal and get like a decent minivan. And so you got someone that maybe wouldn't have made that choice or would have chosen to buy a Dodge over this VW van, which was a Chrysler or Dodge, just badged differently. A couple minor tweaks too, but yeah, I got a text from a buddy today. He's sent me a video. I didn't watch the video. He's like, hey, guess what this noise is? I'm like, well, it's either a compounder bearing or a flywheel coming apart, I'm sure, because that's what they do. They blow up compounder bearings.
Yeah,
I should watch that video and follow and see what it actually was.
I remember the first time, and you know, by the time we had this really hitting, well, I was in parts by that point, but a Rutan who tech was like, hey, we have a drivability issue with the transmission. Chrysler requires you to disassemble the transmission to identify the transmission shifting issue, which probably makes sense why Chrysler customers are so fucking unhappy, because their trans probably comes apart 9 times to try to diagnose and repair an issue.
Yeah, I will say to the very, very little defense of the Chrysler world, they actually do have a lot of really good test equipment for their transmissions, assuming that the test equipment works. And it's, you know, a lot of air-powered moving clutches and stuff
actuators
like
and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then most guys just they send full send air pressure to it and blow the tool apart. But dude, like, I had a Chrysler transmission that, like, it's one of my worst failures in my career. One technician removed the transmission, went out on medical, and actually never ended up coming back. Another technician took the transmission apart and did like 2 bits of putting back together, went out on medical, never came back. And then, of course, like, who got the short straw of putting it back together? Me. So I get this transmission all put back together, get it back in the car, and I come into just like a pile of parts. So imagine a box top, like a lid to a box, the size of a pallet, with just shit.
And you don't do it all the time, so you don't even know what you're not
Never
familiar
had
with.
one apart.
Yeah.
Never had one apart. So, like, I'm not dumb and I can read the repair manual, but when you have just this box top of shit, like, yeah, it's gonna be you know, tough to put it back together. So finally get it back together, put the car in drive, car doesn't move. Like, up on the lift, car won't move. Great. So QTM and I go through a couple tests. Finally, I'm like, dude, I'm taking it back out. Like, I missed something. Let me just take it back out. So take it back out, take it all the way back apart, and I missed the first. It was like the last guy's last step or my first step, one seal that didn't get put in. But that sucked, and it was like a week's worth of misery. But the worst part about it is all this stuff was done. The customer gets the car back. They're saying it still does it, whatever the issue was.
The exact same thing.
Because I wasn't involved in anything up until, like, this dude went out on medical, put this transmission back together. So I drove it with the customer. I'm like, that's normal. They all do that. He's like, really? Well, it shouldn't do that. I'm like, man, I'm not disagreeing with you.
So go drive a new one and see what it feels like. Yeah.
Every one of them does it. He's like, oh, all right, well, that's cool. I'm like, what the hell, man? Come on. Yeah, that was a colossal fail.
I love it.
Wah, wah. I feel like we could do about 30 episodes just beating up on the poor Rutan.
Yeah, we for sure could. So, well, now that makes sense to me. Your first car was a very nice car.
It was.
My first car was not a nice car. So I had a list of cars that I wish I could have had that, you know, more or less, and this is back in the day, and I'm sure you can identify with this, with the back in the day of Super Street and Wings West body kits, and what else was a popular item of choice in that day? Yeah, so to me, I mean, I had things like I would have loved to have a Taurus SHO from the mid 90s, or even the early 90s. SHO was pretty badass relative to other cars.
Did you ever drive a Ford Contour it wasn't the SHO, but it was like their SVT, because they had like the Mustang SVT and the Contour SVT. That actually was a pretty cool car.
I've never driven it. What
cool.
What engine was it? Was it V6, right?
Dude, I don't know. Like having worked at CarMax, like when I worked there, we actually had some pretty rad stuff roll through, and I was like, Ford Contour, this is dumb.
And then you drove it, and you're like, wow.
And I drove like, okay, well, I see where we're at with this. This is all right.
Yeah, that was back in the day when there was a lot of American cars that were weird, like Econobox cars that also had cool versions, like the Omni GHL, GLH. Goes like hell. Yeah, GLH.
Please tell me that's exactly what the acronym was.
It is. Yeah.
Like, is it really like from the manufacturer?
From manufacturer. Awesome. GLH. It was a 2.2 liter turbo.
Nobody would ever get away with that today.
No, God, no. People would be so upset if you had a thing that said "goes like hell," and it was an Omni, so it was like an Econobox car that just had like think about a 2.2 liter turbo engine back in the late 80s.
Yeah, that's the car I always have to do a double take. I'm like, is that a Golf?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not a Golf.
It looks like a Rabbit, kind of, right? Yeah,
it totally does. It totally does. If you say it doesn't, get your enthusiast hat off for a second and just look at it as like a normal.
From a normal person, for sure. 9 out of 10 people you talk to on the street couldn't even tell the difference between an Omni and a Rabbit at all. You just show them side
even
by
with
side,
the badging right on the back.
What's the difference? They'd be like, I don't know. That one's brown, and that one's off brown.
Off brown.
Because everything in the 80s was fucking brown.
I like brown cars. I don't care. I don't know about off brown, but I like brown cars. I might have to pass on off brown.
No, the brown is a pretty bad color. It can be good in some cases. I would rather have a brown car than a beige car for sure, or like a goldish beige car. That's the worst color.
I would rather have a brown car than no car. That's for sure. So I'm sure you have way more cars that you wanted. I wasn't really into cars for quite some time. I mean, obviously there's the gimmies, right? Like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing to have a Ferrari Testarossa or a 911 or something like that. But clearly at 16, most people aren't shopping that. At least they shouldn't be anyway.
That's weird because I guess my dreams were, because my dreams felt more attainable to me. Like I would have loved a late 80s 300ZX at the time. And that was probably, not too far off from attainable for me. I probably could have even gotten a loan to get one if I really wanted to. Probably better I didn't. Because
imagine what your car insurance would have been.
Oh my God. In New Jersey, car insurance is fucking insane.
Is it really?
Oh yeah. Well, it's the most populated state per square mile. So car insurance for young teenage males is a fucking disaster. I can't
remember what mine was.
I shopped around when I was in my late teens to get out my own insurance and off my parents. And I think it was something like $1,300 a month or something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was something
Holy
insane.
Cow.
It was some like outrageous number that you're like, nobody can pay for this.
Yeah, this is how we get out of having to do it. We just throw you an absurd. I think on my Integra. So the Integra, honestly, is probably one of the most expensive cars I've ever owned. Throwing everything into the mix, it got broken into a bunch of times, which didn't help my car insurance rate. That's for sure. I think I paid like $1,300 or $1,100 every 6 months for insurance on that car. Yeah. It sucked, yeah. And like I had to write a check and drive it to the insurance company because it was always like paying it on the day it was due. Because you're, I don't know how old it was, like 20, and so like you don't pay ahead on your bills when you're 20. You're just like, man, it's due like in a couple weeks. It's fine. I'll just drive up there and drop it off at midnight on the day it's due because that's when the check's created.
You have time, right? Like back in those days, time is all you have. Now,
now mine's like just auto draft. I don't even think about it.
Yeah, try not to. Yeah, I had a lot of cars that I wish I could have had. I mean, I even think about cars like I knew somebody with a Nissan Pulsar.
Those are cool.
And I was like, man, I would have loved to have that car just because it had T-tops and whatever. But yeah, now I own pretty much exclusively VW and Audi products, which, I think there's other cool cars out there, which is, that's the one thing that I eventually will branch out to other brands just for that reason, because I think there's plenty of cool cars to be had.
There is so many cool cars to be had. And, one of the things I think you and I probably get this very similar viewpoint kind of touched on a minute ago is like, you're VW Audi dudes. Why would you ever consider anything else? And I think I got really lucky when I added the Miata to the fleet, because like, even though a girl car, right? Most people think that like,
no, Miata's not a girl car. It's way
dude,
too much of an enthusiast car.
Go through the comments in the videos and look at all those comments about it. People really do believe that. A hairdresser car. So this is maybe
that is not a hairstylist car. All right.
I didn't realize that people said that about the Miata, right? I assume that most people think like convertibles are girls' cars, which is just stupid. But whatever, like think about it however you want. So I got the Miata and I had it for a while, and like right about the time I was about to get it completed, it was early this year, I go get my hair cut, and the dude cutting my hair, I was like, Daryl, man, like I got to ask you this question. It's a little uncomfortable. Just if you don't want to answer it, don't answer it. It's fine. I'm not going to be upset. I'm like, are Miatas like hairdresser cars or like, girls' cars or whatever? He's like, it's convertible, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, no hairdresser wants to drive a convertible and mess their hair up. I'm like,
oh,
perfect.
That's for sure true.
Perfect.
Any girl who's a hairdresser does not. She cares a lot about her hair. She cares about how she looks.
That's kind of how I felt about it too. But I mean, legit though, the Miata is one of the most raced, cars in the world, and it's a cool car and it's fun.
I don't even know if I would say it's one of the most raced. I would say it's probably the most raced car.
It's gotta be up there. If it's not one, it's a close second. And there was really a whole point to all this that I was saying, but I've since forgotten it. So can you just rewind that whole thing and just cut that?
In a previous episode that Max and I talked about, I think I said the Miata is overrated only for the fact that it's so hyped as an enthusiast car.
I think if you get into like the low level racing, autocross and things like that, it's the go-to car, right?
Yeah.
In fact, there was an autocross a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think.
Ooh, I heavy poured that one a little bit.
The whole field was roughly 109, 110 cars. 25 of them were Miatas. So, I mean, it's a huge percentage. There was not one other car that was even close. I think there was like 9 Mustangs, and that was the next closest thing. So, like, I get why people feel that way. But, dude, you're not going to find a car, I don't think, that's more fun, more capable, more balanced, more affordable. Because people are talking about, like, oh, yeah, I had to buy this for my Miata. It was like $200. I'm like, have you shopped Volkswagen prices? That shit would be $1,000. I'll spend $200 on it all damn day.
Yeah. Put
something like that on this car, and it's even more expensive.
Well, car, those two cars are getting pretty out of hand. Did you see there was an R32 that sold recently, or that was up for sale on Bring a Trailer that had like, I think like 5,000 original miles?
Somebody sent me that, and I got to the point where I don't even want to click on those things anymore. Mostly because I feel like this car with 5,000 miles completely defeats the whole purpose of these cars. They're awesome. They were built to be driven.
Stupid.
You should
drive the fucking car.
Put no miles on it? Cool. Like 0, fine. But otherwise, drive the damn car.
I don't know. To me, I think you and I are the same in the sense that we don't treat cars like an asset. We treat cars like a car because it's a fucking car and you should drive it. And who gives a shit? It's a depreciating asset unless you're going to put it on blocks, drain the oil, drain the coolant, drain the power steering fluid out of it, and just let it sit in a garage for fucking 30 years. Who gives a shit? Just drive the car.
I I guess like there's a collector side to the car, and people want to have this collector piece and whatnot. I don't think this car, like, yes, it's rare. Yeah, there were only 5,000. They're not making more. Totally on board. The car was $32,000 new, right? And this was back in 2004. So do the calculation. It's probably knocking on the door of 38,000, give or take, with inflation. Probably more than that now. There is not a way you could ever convince me that buying this car today, even with low miles, is worth $40,000.
Well, that's what it sold. We looked when somebody here who works here sent me that one, that we looked and I was like, okay, what is the most expensive one that's sold on Bring a Trailer? It was like, it sold for $44,000, I think.
Yeah, that was like mid last year, I think. Or maybe early last. It was last year sometime.
Low. It was like 15,000 miles or something like that, and
which
it sold.
Cool. It's cool.
Amazing.
It's cool.
I love the Mark IVR, especially. We have a customer here who has one that has like 50,000 miles.
That's cool.
And I had to pull it in the shop one night for the guys because we were shooting video there and whatever. I had to pull it in when we were done, and it reminded me of I worked at a dealer and sat in a passenger seat when we PDI'd one and took it for a test drive. I remember what it's like. Those cars were fucking badass when they were new. And it was certainly reminiscent of that and felt more like that than I think most do. It also reminded me of how good those goddamn seats are.
The best.
Yeah, they're the best seats. Yeah,
the cloth are way better than the leather. Sorry if somebody's gonna get sad about that. I have one of each, and the cloth night and day better than the leather.
'Cause you don't move. Yeah, they're not fat friendly though. If you are overweight, they are certainly not for you.
Yeah. You can't be husky, and you got to watch your balls getting in and out. Of this.
Catch them on a bolster. Yeah.
The seat, that's for sure. Yeah, obviously I'm an R32 enthusiast, and they're cool. I don't feel like you can reasonably justify to me $30,000-$40,000 on a car like that. I mean, now keep in mind I'm super cheap. I paid 11.5 for that one, and I feel like I paid about $5,000 too much.
You feel like it was a stretch, yeah.
Well, ultimately, it's still a damn Mark IV. I just did a radio on this thing, and the glove box door was broken, so I, used some magnets to hold it on. Well, now instead of the door being broken, the whole damn glove box is broken. So I might need you to price me out a glove box.
I think we can work that out.
How's the second one? You said it's a heavier pour.
It's actually not bad now that it's like kind of diluted and kind of shaken up a little bit. It's not too bad. This is the third one. The other ones, I think, were kind of light pours, I would guess. But this one was a little heavy. Even with the heavy pour, I think the lime really takes a lot of the edge off the gin.
The lime's where it's at.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare have. It's weird. I wouldn't dare have one without a lime.
Yeah, I feel like it would be unpleasant. I don't mind. Maybe it'll be my go-to drink when I don't know what to do.
When you have 8,000 things to choose from, and you just get a gin and tonic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as far as cars, I think there was not a lot of options for me because I didn't have a lot of money, and I for whatever reason I wasn't considering getting a loan at that point. I think
smart,
probably smart for that age, but I think I just wasn't aware enough to even know that was even an option for me. Worked out better, I think, in a grand scheme of things. But I had the same two cars, the Jimmy and then the GTI, until I basically moved here in 2004, and then I probably had it for a few more years. So I probably had two cars in the span of maybe 6 years.
I was going through cars pretty quick back then.
Yeah. What was it? You said the Integra was the first car you modified.
Yeah. I mean, I did a little bit of stuff to the Jeep, refinishing trim pieces and put a stereo in the thing and whatnot. But the Integra had H&R springs. It had an Apex exhaust or Apex-I.
Apex-E, yeah.
Exhaust, an AEM intake. and there was like one or two other little things that it had. It was a cool car. Really, I found a picture of it not long ago. I was like, man, that's here's how much I liked that car. It was black. That car made me swear I would never own another black car again. But when did I sell that?
That's Black Magic Pearl though, because that's not a uni black car that you have all those swirl problems with as badly, at least.
But I said I would have sold this car in 2002. I said in 2002 I'll never own a black car again, and it took me 18 years before I got one. So I feel like I did pretty damn good on that one. Yeah, that was a cool car. That was the last car that I really spent a lot of time and effort keeping clean, partly because it was black, so it was always dirty. But you touched on it earlier. I had the time to, and so and like I could just wash it at my parents' house, and I didn't have to pay the water bill or go to the car wash or have someone else wash it. So that makes it a lot easier when you don't have to pay any money to just buy some soap and wash it. Now I'm spraying the car with the hose in here, and I'm like, this is costing me money. I don't want to wash this anymore. It's clean enough.
I certainly don't do a lot of washing of my cars. They make fun of me here because they say my cars often have what they call boat stains on them, which are like things from when water runs down the side of them and it causes like stains on the body of the car.
Little mildew. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I'm certainly not the most attentive automotive enthusiast, but time is not an asset I have a lot of. So yeah, it's just
I heard that.
Yeah,
I would rather do a handful of other things rather than wash the car. That said, I do love having a clean car. I mean, boy, a clean car is just way better. I just don't have the time or patience anymore. And I think what does it though is that like every time I go and like, all right, we're gonna detail this car, we're gonna get it perfectly flawless, I find things wrong with it. Here's a door ding I didn't know, a scratch that I didn't know. Oh, look, so how did this wheel get scuffed? I didn't even hit anything. I don't know. There's this wheel right here. That's a problem on. I don't even know.
One of the new speeds?
Yeah, and I'm the only one that drives it. I can't even blame it on my wife. So maybe I'll blame it on the kid. She hit it with her bike or something.
Yeah. So when you got into cars, was it because of the Integra?
I would say that's probably like the car that was the catalyst, because the Integra, opened up a world of really cool, like mid 90s cars. And I think if I had to pick like my favorite era of cars, it would be like the mid 90s, primarily Japanese cars. The Integra was awesome. That was right when the Type R was like a big deal. In fact, if I tried
still a big deal.
Dude, now it's like
they're fucking crazy. $50,000 for a fucking Integra Type R.
I think I would. All right, so let me ask you a question. If you had $50,000 and you had to choose between a perfect Mark IV R32 or a perfect Integra Type R, which one would you choose?
I would get a Turbo Supra.
Is this thing hello?
What? Yeah, I mean, for $50,000, you're gonna. For me, I would have to pick an R32, but only for the fact that it only makes sense for me. That's my problem now, is it doesn't make sense for me to own a non-VW Audi product. Now we're gonna be moving into BMW in the somewhat near future, so that will change. But even still, it's just like, it's hard to justify $50,000 for an R32. Like,
I'm with you.
I love them. They're awesome cars, especially the Mark IV is such a nostalgic car for me. But performance-wise, for $50,000, I'm working. We're gonna be working on some different series on some things, because I'm like 99% sure the economy is about to fucking collapse.
Ain't that the damn truth?
Yeah. So we're gonna be working on some other things about flipping cars, buying cheap cars, different things to try to make sense content-wise for that type of climate. I happened to open up Facebook Marketplace and I saw a fucking Bentley for $50,000.
I think the problem with a $50,000 Bentley is you still need another $20,000 to make it not a piece of shit.
This one did not look like a piece of shit, obviously. Now,
of course, it didn't look like a piece of shit.
It's hard to say if that's true. You know, it may.
You'd be better off with a Phaeton for $3,000 and put the $10,000 that it needs in it, because the Phaeton, honestly, is a badass car.
I agree.
We
both started on working on VW right around the same time, which means it was right around when the Phaeton was new.
Phaeton, Touareg, R32. It was the heyday of awesome and complete fucking disaster.
I vividly remember, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I vividly remember, because I partied way, 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 way hard back in my day, having a tremendously heavy hangover, working on a Phaeton that I was doing like heavy diagnostic work on, and I turned on the massaging seats and nearly passed out in the driver's seat while I was working on it, just because I was like, oh, I feel terrible.
Hey man, you could just let GFF run back then and just zone out. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. I see Phaetons come up from time to time, and I just think, like, what an awesome car. What a stupid thing to even consider buying one.
Yes.
What a fun project to do. And also, you probably hate yourself, because why would you even consider this? And that all happens in the span of about 3 seconds, and then I keep on scrolling. But yeah, dude, for 50 grand, you can buy, even today, you can buy so much more of a car. Because if you're spending $50,000 on this, or $40,000 or whatever on this, or the Type R, like, you're legit rolling the dice that this car will retain that level of value long term, because you're probably not going to flip it. Because you're definitely not going to make money that way.
It probably will.
Maybe, but is it like, are you going to keep up with inflation even?
No, I doubt you'll keep up with inflation.
You know,
I feel like right now, this very minute, today, is the highest point the Mark IV R32 will ever get when you factor in inflation.
I'm hoping that me doing a bunch of go fast stuff to this one will bump the value up, because, like, my egotistical narcissist says that when I got this one is when prices really started to jump up on these things. I don't think that's actually true, but, like, that timing was kind of right. I just don't think it had anything to do with me. So I'm hoping this, like, shoots it up another level with this one. But let's be honest, that shit ain't gonna happen.
It's possible, but not probable, right?
No probable.
I think that those cars are probably not going to continue to retain their value in that sense. I think that right now they're in a crazy way, and I don't know if it's just because the economy was so good for so long that people have cash and that's why they're investing in stuff like that. But the value of a Mark IV R32 being, now granted, I mean, what's a normal Mark IV R go for still? It's still in the low teens, right?
Yeah, I would say 12 to 15 is probably the sweet spot for good miles, good condition. You know, sub 150,000 miles. At 150, you start to see, like, a pretty aggressive drop in pricing. Yeah. But I think the nice ones will hold their value relative to inflation. The ones that are average, like this one, will probably, you know, this is an 11.5 car, was 11.5 car. I could probably sell it for 15. It'll probably be a $15,000 car for a while. But, like, the people that want them as collectors probably already have them and paid stupid top dollar for them. There'll probably be some kind of cyclical thing that comes back through, especially if VW does some sort of homage to the R32, which we all know that shit ain't gonna happen. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I feel like we're maxed out. Unless we're not, then I got 2 R32s for sale if anybody wants to buy them. Because I like R32s, but I also like money a lot. So that'll be a tough one.
Okay, well, I think we should close it for today and revisit on our next episode.